Good evening. Welcome to church. Let's open our time by singing Turn Your Eyes Upon Jesus. Will you stand, please? And let's sing together, Turn Your Eyes Upon Jesus. Together now. Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Full in his wonderful face. And the things of earth will grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. Turn your eyes upon Jesus. Take hold of his powerful hand. He will lift you up in his mighty love. In the strength of your God you can stand. Excellent singing. Brother Kermit Hudson, would you mind opening our service in prayer?
Amen. Thank you so much. Please be seated. It's so good to have you in God's house this evening. I've got a special up here. That looks to me like a rainbow. I'm not sure which way it goes. Isn't that great? And I've got Noah wrote on the back of it, so I am tickled to death. I'll put that right here and get that put up somewhere. Let's talk about announcements. Tuesday at 6 o'clock. The Grow O team is going to go out and do some good, or stay in and do some good, whichever we have the request to do. So if you're on the O team, please show up for that. Wednesday, the same as it is always. Our kids will meet at 6:30, and then prayer and Bible study at 7. Thursday, ladies, the light keepers get to meet. Leah, have we picked a menu yet? What is it? Lord have mercy. What a menu. Make sure you show up, ladies, and that'll be, you get fed physically, you get fed spiritually, and you'll have a great, great time of fellowship. Fellowship is where it's at for God's people. Men, we have our annual Momentum Men's Conference, and that is this coming Saturday. We're going to have registration at 8:30, but we'll have some donuts and coffee and stuff starting at 8 o'clock. And then at 9 o'clock, the conference is going to start. And if you guys can, please let me know that you're coming. I'm going to go down and get the meal goods, the lunchtime goods from, what's that, Ridgeview? Ridgeview Barbecue. And I need to get the order placed the first of the week. It's going to be a good eats. Also, we're going to have, let's see, who's our speakers? We've got Dan Vaughn. He's a pastor. The first church plant that we did up in Weston, West Virginia will be here. We've got Jonathan Rinker. And Jonathan Rinker, if you were here whenever the Appalachian Bible College chorale sang, he was the guy that talked on the in-between there. He's a professor and also a pastor up in Beckley. And then we've got Aaron Reynolds. Yeah, Aaron Reynolds also does our Search the Scriptures. It's what we use for monthly Bible study. And that's a great lineup. Aaron will stay over on Saturday night, and he'll speak here next Sunday morning in the Sunday morning service, and you'll enjoy him very much. So just a great lineup of speakers. I hope that you can. I hope you invite some folks. You know, I've had, let me see, to get them added up. People who have already told me they're going to be here. 2. So that's kind of hard to budget for. But you know, we always put out there that you can go on the website, you can pre-register. We'll save money if you register early. Yeah, 2. And those two, here's the funny part, those two, I don't know if anybody's hit the website, but those two are the ones that texted me and said, I'll be there. So, you know, you don't even get the goodness of the website. But, you know, we'll have us a great time if it's those two. And if the speakers outnumber the people that'll be here, we'll still have a great time. But pray about that, and if you can do that, it's one day a year. It's not that long, 9 to 2:30, and we'll get you out of here in plenty of time to get your chores done around the house. Everything else is, if you're interested, we're going to try to go and get the qualification data from CEF the first part of the week. So if you've signed up and you want to help in Child Evangelism Fellowship, the Good News Club down at Chamberlain Elementary, the form is still in there for you to sign. We'll try to get that taken care of. Samaritan's Purse is coming up. That will be upon us before too long. We have a goal of 75 shoe boxes this year. And there's the list of things that we need that we're going to put in the shoe boxes. And looking forward to that. Let me see. We got a prayer request from this past Wednesday down below that. And all the other stuff you can make out there as far as the nursery schedule, shuttles, and the financial report. Kermit, when you go in to have your thing done? It was done this past Wednesday. And everything went well? So far. You feel better? Boy, you sure look good. It's good to have you with us. Good to have you with us too, man. Let me think. What's next? I will take up an offering. When in doubt, ask the ushers to come on down. We'll take up our Sunday evening tithes and offerings. Yes. Yeah, that Jackie is the cousin. What was your aunt's name? Pearl. Aunt Pearl passed away. The funeral's at Leonard Johnson Funeral Home up in Marmet at 1 o'clock. Yeah, funeral's at 1. I got this, David, okay? But if you want to visit, it's 2 hours before the funeral, which would make it 11 o'clock. Visitation at 11, funeral at 1. Support my brother here. He's our newest ordained deacon, installed and proper, and he's excited. He'll be preaching up here. He wants up here so bad he can't really stand it. So we'll just keep praying for that. Yeah, give it a good shot there, big guy. All right. Won't you bless our offering, would you? Amen.
358. This time in the blue hymnals, let's stand together, or you can look behind the pastor there. Let's stand together and sing, stand up for Jesus. All together now. Stand up for Jesus, ye soldiers of the cross. Lift high his royal banner, it must not suffer loss. From victory unto victory, his army shall he lead, till every foe is vanquished, and Christ is Lord indeed. Stand up for Jesus, the trumpet call obey, for to the mighty conflict in this his glorious day, ye that are men now serve him against unnumbered foes. Let courage rise with danger, and strength to strength oppose. Stand up for Jesus, stand in his strength alone. The arm of flesh will fail you, ye dare not trust your own. Put on the gospel armor, and watching unto prayer, where duty calls or danger, be never wanting there. Greet your neighbor this evening. Good evening again. Turn in your Bibles, if you would, to the book. Chapter 1, verse 1, the book of Job. Chapter 1, verse 1. You're going to have to bear with me because I'm going to read quite a bit this evening. I know that's a shocker, right? Job chapter 1, I'm going to begin reading in verse 1 in just a moment. There was a man in the land of Uz whose name was Job, and that man was perfect and upright, and one that feared God and eschewed evil. And there were born unto him 7 sons and 3 daughters. His substance also was 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, and 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 she-donkeys, and a very great household, so that this man was the greatest of all the men of the east. And his sons went and feasted in their houses, every one his day, and sent and called for their 3 sisters to eat and to drink with them. And it was so, when the days of their feasting were gone about, that Job sent and sanctified them, and rose up early in the morning and offered burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job said, It may be that my sons have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. Thus did Job continually. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them. And the Lord said unto Satan, Whence comest thou? Then Satan answered the Lord and said, From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down it. And the Lord said unto Satan, Hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, a perfect and upright man, one that feareth God and escheweth evil? Then Satan answered the Lord and said, Doth Job fear God for naught? Hast not thou made an hedge about him, and about his house, and about all that he hath on every side? Thou hast blessed the work of his hands, and his substance is increased in the land. But put forth thine hand now, and touch all that he hath, and he will curse thee to thy face. And the Lord said unto Satan, Behold, all that he hath is in thy power, only upon himself put not forth thine hand. So Satan went forth in the presence of the Lord. And there was a day when his sons and his daughters were eating and drinking wine in their eldest brother's house, and there came a messenger unto Job, and said, The oxen were plowing, and the donkeys feeding beside them. And the Sabaeans fell upon them, and took them away. Yea, they have slain the servants with the edge of the sword, and I only am escaped alone to tell thee. While he was yet speaking, there came also another, and said, The fire of God hath fallen from heaven, and hath burned up the sheep and the servants, and consumed them. And I only am escaped alone to tell thee. While he was yet speaking, there came also another, and said, The Chaldeans made out 3 bands, and fell upon the camels, and have carried them away, yea, and slain the servants with the edge of the sword, and I only am escaped alone to tell thee. While he was yet speaking, there came also another, and said, Thy sons and thy daughters were eating and drinking wine in their eldest brother's house. And behold, there came a great wind from the wilderness, and smote the 4 corners of the house, and it fell upon the young man, and they are dead, and I only am escaped alone to tell thee. Then Job arose, and rent his mantle, and shaved his head, and fell down upon the ground, and worshipped, and said, Naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. In all this Job sinned not, nor charged God foolishly. Again, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them to present himself before the Lord. And the Lord said unto Satan, From whence comest thou? And Satan answered the Lord and said, From going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down it. And the Lord said unto Satan, Hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the land, a perfect and an upright man, one that feareth God and escheweth evil? And still he holdeth fast his integrity, although thou movest me against him, to destroy him without cause. And Satan answered the Lord and said, Skin for skin, yea, all that a man hath, he will give for his life. But pour forth thine hand now, and touch his bone and his flesh, and he will curse thee to thy face. And the Lord said unto Satan, Behold, he is in thine hand, but save his life. So went Satan forth from the presence of the Lord, and smote Job sore with boils, from the sole of his foot unto his crown. And he took him a potsherd to scrape himself withal, and he sat down among the ashes. Then said his wife unto him, Dost thou still retain thine integrity? Curse God and die. But he said unto her, Thou speakest as one of the foolish women speaketh. What? Shall we receive good at the hand of God, and shall we not receive evil? In all this did not Job sin with his lips. So this evening, we're going to begin a new sermon series. We covered our last judge on Wednesday. We talked about Samson, and I want to move on between now and the beginning of December. From now till Christmas, we are going to study the book of Job. So Job is one of those figures that many Christians, we like to think we really, truly understand. And don't get me wrong, we definitely have more than just a basic grasp But there's so much more depth to this book that a simple thought alone or just a quick glance or a quick read can really fully explore. We need to dig deeper. So many believe that Job is a book of suffering. And you know what? Suffering is a major component. But I want to take the next several sermons and prove to you that Job is actually about sovereignty. It's actually about trust. It's actually about faith. And so what can we learn from the life of Job, his suffering, and his trust? Tonight's sermon is going to serve as sort of a introduction to the book. So I'm going to reference from several different places, but I wanted to read that beginning part to give you a basic idea of who Job is and what he is all about. And here's some things that we can learn from this book, okay? Right off the bat, the first thing I want to bring out. The book of Job gives us a framework for biblical suffering, all right? Those two words you might not think belong together, biblical and suffering. But the book of Job gives us a framework not only for what it is, but also how to interact with it, how to go about enduring it. So according to verse 1, all the way back at the beginning, according to verse 1, Job is called a godly man. He's blameless. He fears God. He shuns evil. And yet that same guy ends up suffering terribly. He ends up enduring great suffering. And here's something worth noting about the book of Job. We think maybe it's a short book, maybe because the name is so short, but it's actually one of the longest in the Bible. 42 chapters worth of stuff, all to express the anguish of a prolonged season of suffering, especially when it doesn't seem to make very much sense. And so Job I consider to be a very timely book. Not for right now, but any time, because we all go through periods of suffering. And we all endure the same types of things that Job might have endured. And the book forces us to grapple with that mystery. Remember how I told you before, sometimes it doesn't make sense to us. Sometimes we don't have the answers. And with all of this rawness and confusion and seeming randomness from the book of Job, at least in these first few chapters. And I word it that way because that's how it appears to us. It appears random. It appears haphazard. It appears like it's coming out of nowhere. But I'm promising you right now, the Bible teaches anything but randomness. God is not a God of random things. He's not a God of the chance or the coincidence or the happenstance or the serendipity. Everything that we read in the scriptures takes place because God said so, because God desired it, including Job's suffering. In fact, I've noticed that many people, Christians included, who don't use the Bible as their exclusive source of truth and authority, they interact with suffering in ways that are harmful, in ways that are not good for them. Let me give you some of them. First, some folks, they're so sold out to a formula or a plan that they wear themselves out trying to make it work. The formula goes like this. If I do this, then God will do that. Many Christians are sold out to this formula. And they think that if they just pray harder, they claim more promises, they rally others to pray around them, they fast, they give more, they serve more, they do more, they don't speak in unbelief, they rebuke the devil, etc. If they just do all that, then God will give them an easy and carefree life that they can just coast through. Now, none of those things that I listed, they're not bad in and of themselves. But if you're just doing them to curry favor, you're not really treating God like the creator of the universe. You're more treating him like a genie in a bottle. And whenever things get bad, you just sort of rub the lamp, and out comes the genie and say, okay, I need you once more. Would you do this for me? Second, there's some folks who reject the Bible. Some folks are sold out to the formula, but some folks also reject the Bible's teachings of God, and they sort of redefine him. They sort of reframe him to their liking so they don't end up being disappointed by him. In other words, instead of changing themselves, they try to change God. And I hate to say this, many of them accomplish the changes they desire, and they begin worshiping a God that they themselves have invented. sort of like a redefined, reframed, a blurry vision type of God. There's no clarity. And it's commendable that people want to hang on to God. But for many folks, the only way they can do it and avoid being disappointed in him is to redefine him altogether. They end up worshiping a strange, man-made, sanitized version of God. This is not the way. Third, some folks have rejected God outright, and these are the ones that break my heart the most. They reject God outright so that they don't have to wrestle with the concept of a good God in a wicked world filled with sin. And when you reject God altogether, the tension of how to reconcile that stuff, it goes away. So you don't have to worry about it anymore because I'm just not going to believe. I'm just not going to open myself to that. You know, Richard Dawkins is a very famous atheist. He wrote a book called River Out of Eden. In that book, he said this: in a universe of blind physical genetic replication, some people are going to get hurt, other people are going to get lucky, and you won't find any rhyme or reasoning to it, nor any justice. The universe we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is at the bottom no design, no purpose, no evil, and no good. Nothing but blind, pitiless indifference. DNA neither knows nor cares. DNA just is, and we dance to its music. If you just reject God outright, you can write off all the bad things that happen to just blind, pitiless indifference. And there's a reason why none of those approaches to suffering add up. Not biblically, because they leave out a key ingredient. In general, the Bible creates this huge margin for the mystery of God and his ways that are past finding out. Now that sounds like a cop-out answer. I know it does. Because sometimes if somebody comes up to me and they say, Josh, why this? Josh, why that? Josh, how this? And I have to look at them and say, I don't know. Because the Bible, which is our only source of truth on this earth, does not tell me. Romans chapter 11, beginning in verse 33. Oh, the depth of the riches of both of the wisdom and knowledge of God. How unsearchable are his judgments, and his ways past finding out. For who hath known the mind of the Lord, or who hath been his counselor? Isaiah 55, beginning in verse 8. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. To say that our understanding of the universe is limited, that's an understatement. It's naturally that way. What created being could possibly fully understand its creator? And I wish I could answer the questions. I wish I could look at you as whenever you ask me, Josh, what is God doing? You're asking me to look into the mind of the infinite with my finite mind. And you guys know how my brain is. All right, if Leah gives me more than one task, smoke starts to come out of my ears. And you're asking me to understand the infinite creator of the universe. There will always be a measure of mystery with God. However, in spite of the things that we cannot know, I don't want to leave you hanging. There are things that we can know. There are things that the Bible does give us that we can know for sure when it comes to our suffering. Let's look in chapter 1, verse 12. And the Lord said unto Satan, Behold, all that he hath is in thy power, only upon himself put not forth thine hand. So Satan went forth from the presence of the Lord. So this is an often overlooked portion of the passage. We tend to focus on on all of Job's setbacks and all the suffering involved. And that's true. Chapter 1 sets the rest of the book into motion with all this tragedy and suffering. But here's what I'm getting at with verse 12. Satan had to get permission before he was allowed to do anything to Job. Everything that you see in terms of suffering in chapter 1, Satan couldn't do on his own. He cannot behave independently. He can't just go out and do something on a whim. He can't just be sitting around and saying, I think I'll do this. He needs the Creator's permission before he can do it. And so if I look in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13, there hath no temptation taken you but such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that ye are able, but will with the temptation also make a way to escape, that ye may be able to bear it. Now listen, there will be temptations, there will be tests, there will be trials, there will be sufferings, and Satan will work. But that verse right there guarantees that nothing you face is insurmountable so long as you have God's guiding hand. Imagine it like a gigantic sieve. Everything that Satan could possibly want to do to you must first go through God's sieve. And you say, well, Josh, why does he allow certain things but not others? Mystery. I don't know. That's the mystery of God. But I can tell you this with truth and assurance, that whatever comes your way, A, has gone through God's sieve first. B, will not overcome you so long as you are seeking his help. It's a promise. It's a guarantee. It's something that we can know. And I believe Job had at least a little bit of understanding of that whenever it came to this truth. It's based on the way Job responded to his suffering. Because if you look in verses 20 and 21, it says this. Then Job arose and rent his mantle and shaved his head and fell upon the ground and what? What did he do? He worshiped. And said, naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Now, right off the bat, after Job had been told everything that had happened to his family, and his possessions, and his livelihood, he could have responded in any number of ways. And quite honestly, I would have given him a pass. Job lost everything. If he had stood up in anger with his veins sticking out, and his eyes bulging as he yelled at the sky, I wouldn't have condoned it, but I would have at least understood the passion. But that's not what Job did. That wasn't the response to his suffering. He chose to worship. Was it easy? No. But he chose to submit to the sovereignty of God. Was it easy? No. Is it easy to suffer? Is it easy to worship? Is it always easy to submit to the sovereignty of God? Is it always easy to look at the things that are going on around us and say, Lord, you are in control? No. You want to grab onto something and hold on to it with all your might. You want to grip it because you're afraid that you are going to lose it. You're going to slip. You're going to fall. You're going to crash out. It's hard to trust God sometimes. But aren't you so glad that our trust in God has no bearing on his faithfulness to us? Even in times when you don't trust God, that doesn't mean the sieve becomes wider. God is still in control. As you move through the book of Job, you're going to see he wasn't always like that. He wasn't always the worshiping type. You'll see he had good days and bad days. He had right thinking. He had wrong thinking. But what you won't see is a loss of faith. What you won't see is a rejection from Job toward God. What you will see is a growth in godly spiritual maturity. By the time we reach the end of this book, you'll have a much fuller understanding of what it means to biblically suffer. Here's a second thing. Not only do we get a framework for biblical suffering from the book of Job, we're also given two very different responses to the suffering when it comes. And so depending on your outlook, depending on your inward starting point, your suffering could give way to a couple things. The first one I want to look at is a faithless despair. It's almost fatalistic. Who cares? Look in chapter 2, verse 9. Then said his wife unto him, Dost thou still retain thine integrity? Curse God and die. Ouch. Anger, despair, apathy. Curse God and die. And to be honest with you, I don't want to be too terribly hard on Job's wife here. She just lost 10 children. She just lost her whole livelihood, and it's looking like her husband is so sick to the point that he might even die, never be the same again, never be able to work again. So her entire world has been turned upside down. And whenever she sees suffering, we see this response of faithless despair. And we can't just ignore that. The Bible doesn't say explicitly, but this kind of response, how shall I put it? It almost always comes from someone who's holding on to that formula I mentioned earlier. You know what I'm talking about? Good things happen to good people, bad things happen to bad people. If I just do this for God, then God will do this for me. Okay, if you are holding on to that formula, whenever suffering does come your way, you're almost assured to go towards this despair, this fatalism, this faithless despair. And so Job's wife is basically saying this: because something bad just happened to us, and I think we're good people, we're done with God. He didn't hold up his end of the bargain. He didn't follow through with the formula. Just curse God and die, Job. That's her response. And Job's wife helps us to understand Satan's real goal. How? Listen carefully. Satan's goal is to not heap suffering on your life. It's not his goal. That's merely a means to an end. What he really wants you to do is turn away from God. What he really wants you to do is cut you off from God, rob you of the hope and the help that can only be found in him. That's what Satan's goal is. Quite honestly, Satan couldn't care less about the physical aspects. He's just using it to get his purposes across. And he knows that some people, by way of physical suffering, will turn away from God. Psalm 34:18 says this: the Lord is nigh unto them that are of a broken heart, and saveth such as be of a contrite spirit. Nobody voluntarily gains those things, by the way. Nobody says, I'm going to wake up today and I'm going to have a broken heart. The heart must be broken, often by something else, occasionally by suffering, as a way to get one's attention. And God is close to such people. You know, by the way, there's no shame in having a broken heart. I would love to get away with that. There's no shame with being sad about something. But here's the thing. Compounding your broken heart and making it worse with a broken theology is going to leave you with a broken relationship with God. If you take that broken heart and you run away and you say you draw poor theological, unbiblical conclusions about what you're going through, Satan wins. He's accomplished his goal. He's turned you away from God. Now, Job's wife won't be the only one responding to suffering like this. The response will come again. But one of the central themes of the book is actually not his wife's response, but Job's response. It's the other response in the book that we're going to be talking about. Look in verse 10. But he said unto her, chapter 2, chapter 2, verse 10. But he said unto her, thou speakest as one of the foolish women speaketh. What? Shall we receive good at the hand of God, and shall we not receive evil? In all this did not Job sin with his lips. Shall we expect, what is wrong with you? Do you expect good things only to come? Do we expect these things? See, Job understood that both good and adversity come from God. He understood the truth of that. And so that nothing comes into our lives doesn't first come through his hands, and then Job demonstrates what I'm going to call an anguished trust. He trusts God, but he still has a broken heart. He trusts God, but he's still going through it. The book of Job shows us that God doesn't reject that anguished trust, even when it's still swirling with questions and with pain. Whenever your faith is low, that doesn't mean that your trust vanishes or disappears. Both can be true. You can still be in anguish and still have trust. Have you ever heard the song that goes like this? Gray skies are going to clear up. Put on a happy face. Brush off the clouds and cheer up. Put on a happy face. Sometimes that's easier said than done, isn't it? You're not always going to want to put on a happy face. And I'm here to tell you, you're not required to. Quite honestly, if you are suffering, if you've lost a loved one, if you have undergone medical procedures, if you're coming up on more medical procedures, if you came to me with a creepy smiley face on, I would think you're weird. Sometimes you don't want to put on a happy face. James 5:11 says, "Behold, we count them happy which endure. Ye have heard of the patience of Job, and have seen the end of the Lord, that the Lord is very pitiful and of tender mercy." Praise God, don't you love that? Sometimes whenever you're going through it and you don't want to put on a happy face, God is pitiful and tender in mercy. You say, "God, do you realize what's going on? Do you know what's happening?" Yes, he does. "God, do you see how broken my heart is?" Yes, he does. "God, do you see all this suffering that I'm going through?" Yes, he does. Now, pause. Do you have a biblical allowance to be miserable and bitter for your whole life? No, you do not have a biblical allowance for that. But the 5th chapter of James lifts up Job as an example of how to persevere in the midst of suffering. Oh, and by the way, James didn't consider Job a failure, even though his faith wasn't the robust, happy kind. And neither are you when suffering comes your way. If I look ahead in chapter 3, and I read from verse 3, this is Job speaking. "Let the day perish wherein I was born, and the night in which it was said, there is a man-child conceived. Let that day be darkness. Let not God regard it from above, neither let the light shine upon it." Now skip ahead to verse 11. "Why died I not from the womb? Why did I not give up the ghost when I came out of the belly? Why did the knees prevent me, or why the breast that I should suck? For now should I have lain still and be quiet. I should have slept. Then had I been at rest." Now, I'm not going to look at Job and say, "Put on a happy face." I'm not going to tell him to cheer up, buck up. I'm not going to tell him to put on a fake smile. Job's been through it. Job's going through it. And you know what Job's conclusion was? He's saying what a lot of us are thinking about suffering, and it really hits hard. I don't want to be here. I don't want to go through this. I wish I had never been born so that I wouldn't be here now. And I'm not going to ask you personally, but I know in the midst of your suffering, either then, now, or at some point in the future, you're going to grapple with those types of things. You're going to say, "I really wish this wasn't happening to me right now. I really wish I wasn't here right now. What did I do to get myself into this situation? God, what have I done?" Looking up, asking questions, seeking, and searching. And that's one of the things that makes this book so important. It doesn't gloss over the suffering. It dives right into it with all of its earthiness. And it's also a somewhat important part of the process. Why? Because until you submit to where you are, you can't even begin the process of seeking after God for your help and your comfort. It's almost like a real-life illustration for salvation. Here, I'll put it this way. If you're truly convinced you're okay and you don't need rescuing, you'll never be saved. If you truly think you're fine and you're good and everything will be all right, you're never going to get to a point to where you think you need God's help. The first step towards salvation is realizing it's needed in your life. That's why it's so important to hear the whole gospel. And so, it's the same type of emptiness. Whenever Job declares that he wishes he were dead, he's not displaying an emptiness of faith. He's displaying an emptiness of self. It's the same type of emptiness that was displayed by Elijah after he was pursued by Jezebel. You remember that one? He said, "Lord, just take my life now. Just let me die." And God said, No, I have more work for you now. It's the same type of emptiness that Jonah had after God had taken away the plant that provided shade. "Lord, just take me now." You know, during the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus said that people who are poor or empty of their own spirit are blessed. Why? Because if they're empty of self, they can be filled with God. That's what we truly want to be as Christians. We want to be empty vessels so that God can use us for whatever he wants. Our spirit needs to be empty so that his spirit can fill. Jump ahead, turn some pages, jump ahead to chapter 7. I'm going to read from verse 11. Therefore, I will not refrain my mouth. I will speak in the anguish of my spirit. I will complain in the bitterness of my soul. Am I a sea or a whale that thou settest a watch over me? When I say my bed shall comfort me and my couch shall ease my complaint, then thou scarest me with dreams and terrifiest me through visions, so that my soul chooses strangling and death rather than my life. I loathe it. I would not live alway. Let me alone, for my days are vanity. Jump down to verse 20. I have sinned. What shall I do unto thee, O thou perverser of men? Why hast thou set me as a mark against thee, so that I am a burden to myself? All that from Job. And you might say, Josh, if Job is so trusting, why does he say stuff like that? That's heavy stuff. And it's a fair question that you might ask, but it seems as though Job is behaving in a way that goes against everything I just said. I just got done telling you about the faith of Job. And now he starts talking like that. But let's compare Job, the one who trusts God, with, say, a typical atheist. One sees the suffering as God's judgment. One sees the suffering as proof for a lack of God's existence. One is Job, and the other says, well, since there is suffering, there must not be a God. Remember that blind, pitiless indifference I told you about? Both are honestly and angrily struggling with God's presence and movement and suffering. But what makes Job any different? What makes him different from the other one? What makes him worthy of our study? Here's the difference. In the midst of suffering, the atheist takes his arguments and complaints and runs away from God. But Job took his arguments and complaints and ran directly to God. That's why I read to you from verse 20. I have sinned. What shall I do unto thee, O thou perverser? Job is praying. He's speaking to God. He's speaking with him. Why hast thou set me as a mark against thee, so that I am a burden to myself? He's got questions. He's got complaints. He's got things that are wondering. But you know where he's going to ask them? You know who he's seeking out to get his answers? He's seeking out God. That's trust. That's faith. Anguished faith? Yes, but still faith. Still trust. And so Job ran to God. He's not the only one you see doing it. When Habakkuk saw death and destruction, he cried and he lamented. And in chapter 2, he went to God. He spoke to God in that book. He asked God, and then he waited for God to answer. And eventually God did answer. Even as Jeremiah confirmed his nickname as the what? Y'all remember? Weeping prophet. Even as he was doing the weeping, he didn't take his tears and his complaints to the pagan gods, or to the pagan kings, or to strangers. He took them directly to God. And so many of the Psalms, they're filled with running to God. Even as the psalmists are complaining to God, they're still running to him, and they're searching to see where he is in the midst of it all, which ultimately is the crux of the book of Job. You know, there's a total of 150 Psalms, but 53 of them are not happy affairs. Why? Because they aren't Psalms of celebration. They're Psalms of personal and even corporate lament. By the way, I put together a list of those Psalms of lament. If you want me to text it to you, I'll text it to you. Just let me know. But those Psalms share something with Job. They display a faith and a trust, but that trust is anguished and directed towards a God who seems to be silent or unaffected. And they say, Lord, I don't know what's going on. Lord, I am so poor in spirit. Lord, I am so oppressed. Lord, I am suffering. Lord, I need help. And so instead of taking your sufferings and running away from God, my biggest, greatest encouragement to you, starting now and through the end of the book of Job, is to take them to God. News alert. Possibly a news alert. It's okay to ask God what he's doing. It's okay to ask for clarity from God. It's okay to look at God and say, Lord, do you not understand? Do you not see? He yearns your communication. What we can't do is approach him with arrogance, with faithlessness, but with faith and with trust. That's what the prophets did. That's what Job did. And honestly, quite honestly, Job got it wrong. He looked at God and said, why are you punishing me like this? I've done something wrong. No, Job had not done anything wrong. Job was being used of God as the ultimate example of what faith in God can do. He didn't know it at the time. He will by the end of chapter 42. But as for right now, he's asking questions. But here's the important thing. He was asking them from God. Is anguish trust ideal? No. But neither is a Christian life that involves suffering. We don't want those things. We don't want to suffer. But the goal should not be to avoid suffering at all costs. I should probably say that again. Our goal, backwards though this sounds, should not be to avoid suffering at all costs. In a world marked by its fallenness, suffering, I'm telling you, is unavoidable. The world is fallen, and it's broken. So your faith may become anguish, but when it does, do not allow Satan to tempt you to throw it all away. Remember, if you run from God, Satan has accomplished his goal. Now, over the course of our study of this book, we'll see and hear a man who was brought down low because of his suffering, but not once did his faith die. And so whenever we do encounter suffering, like Job, starting, as we see in these first few chapters, like Job, whenever you do encounter suffering, your prayer should not be, Lord, please stop this. It should be, Lord, what are you doing in all of this? What is your purpose in all of this? Remember the sieve. Remember that God is in control. And if God truly is in control, and if God knows what he's doing, then there's a purpose behind your suffering. There's a purpose behind your setback. And your prayer should be, Lord, teach me through this. Or whenever tragedy occurs, Lord, work through this. Suffering has occurred. Tragedy has happened. But Lord, work through this. Use this. So Christian, whenever suffering comes your way, could you do the same as Job? The knee-jerk reaction is to run away. I get it. But I encourage you to take your confusion, take your questions, take your pain, take your anguish, take your suffering, and run to God, the one who has the answers. Let's pray. God, I come to you, Lord, once again, Lord, in gratitude and thanksgiving. I pray, God, that you would continue to bless us as a church, bless the folks that are here this evening. I pray, God, that you would continue to teach us from your word. I pray, God, that you would continue to work. Many people here this evening, Lord, are going through some type of suffering. Many more in the world around us. But God, may our prayer not be to end the suffering, but to learn something through it. To learn something about you, to grow closer to you, to increase in spiritual maturity, to be more conformed to your Son. God, I pray that you would use our sufferings for your good and according to your will. We might not always know the reason, but God, help us to have the faith to know and to believe this truth, that you are always in control. I pray in Jesus' name, amen. Y'all stand, please. Be careful out there. It's getting darker earlier these days. I'm going to pray for you this week that you would have a good week and that you would have an opportunity to tell somebody about Jesus and that God will bring it your way. Remember, if you are suffering, number one, you're not suffering alone. Number two, God does indeed know it, and you're not suffering without his stamp of approval. Number three, God knows you can handle what suffering you're going through so long as you are seeking him and his guidance for your help. You should be encouraged by that. You know what? Number four, we're here too. Look at us, look left, look right, look right behind you and everything like that. We as a church, we bear one another's burdens. That's what we do as a church. That's one of the purposes of the church. You do not have to suffer alone. You can endure. That's all I've got for you people. Have a wonderful evening. Take care of yourselves. You are dismissed.
Unholy pages, salvation was scripted. God loved so much that he gave his precious beloved, holy begotten Son, to seek and to save. I was a sinner with no hope of life beyond death and the grave. But one spotless lamb atoned for my sin.